Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so I caught Stavros and Godfrey talking some shit about not just right-wing comedians, but right-wingers in general. So I thought it was just a funny moment to highlight. Just a quick one, and we'll talk about it a little bit and then move on to some other things about what's going on in Minnesota and stuff. But Stavros is always funny because he's a pretty straight shooter. He's able to do these sort of like call-out moments that people like. It's always the moments that seem to go a little bit outside of the boundaries of the conversation that seem to get people the most interested. Those are always the most interesting podcast moments to me, when like someone says something they're not supposed to say, or like things go off the rails. So I think comedians a lot of times are decent at delivering that, if nothing else, like, you know, those moments where they kind of see beyond the veil and call it out. And Stavros is pretty good at that. So he's talked a little bit about these right wingers before, and Godfrey also gets a couple shots in, just a couple thoughts. They move on quickly from this because they didn't seem to want to linger on it. But it starts off with a pretty good Trump impression from Godfrey. So here's that.
Yeah.
May not be for me, but I like what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
I not really like that style, but they're good at it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hear that shit.
I mean, I get the annoyance for sure, because liking meritocracy, the world just so clearly doesn't work that way. You know,
Trump should just run fucking comedy.
Yeah, he's
like,
done a great job with everything else.
Bad.
You're right.
That was so bad. That was so bad. Can you believe it? I can't believe you even have a special.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Who gave him her special? That was so bad.
I think he sort of is. I don't know. Yeah, I think. I don't know if you see what's, like there's a lot of stuff that aligns with Trump. Kind of was selling out, and
Listen, but the right wing shit, like some of these comics are getting all right, and now they want to get shit on black people. I go, but we were hanging out with you.
Yeah, it's pathetic. I mean, it's like, careerist.
But my thing is, why are you going into the woods and shitting on black people?
Well, it goes back to what you're saying about like it's a lack of meritocracy. These people are not good, and they understand that like. Almost all these conservative figures started wanting to just be famous. Ben Shapiro wanted to be a fucking screenwriter. I mean, that's real. And all these people wanted to be famous, and they realized they don't have the goods. No. And so then they decide,
works.
oh, well, no one is catering to these fucking, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of, there's the
Fuentes,
whole, yeah.
All of those guys look like they be pushed in the bushes at school.
Oh, I mean, those guys are just pathetic. I mean,
shut up, fucking McCaffrey.
Fuck you. It does get to a point where you're like, is this what happens when bullying doesn't happen? There's a little bit of that.
Back.
But yeah, there's a whole type of the pure racism. Comics engaging with that. I'm done. Like, I don't even want to discuss it with them, because it's like, once you engage, you're a fucking idiot. You're so stupid.
Yeah.
And it's like, and this is the problem with comedy's gotten to the point. We'll move on because I hate talking about comedy, but it's like, people don't care about being funny. They care about being successful and being rich. Yeah. And so a lot of them see it as a smart market play.
No doubt.
There's a big market to conservatives who want to shit on immigrants and shit on trans people.
Yeah.
So and I don't have the jokes to just be funny. Right. So why don't I make that pivot?
Yeah.
And the same guys who were sucking Trump off, maybe they weren't huge supporters of his politics, but they saw it as an opportunity to court his fan base, and they put that over. It's so pathetic to be a freedom of speech guy and then be like, well, I support Trump. It's like, are you a fucking moron?
Yeah.
Just because you'll be able to say the N-word and you'll be able to say like he's talking about jailing journalists. That's not freedom. We don't matter.
Yeah.
Comedians really think we matter. And we don't at all. We don't matter at all.
It's true.
It's like true. Journalism matters so much more. And like, look what's happening in fucking CBS, where it's like, it's just that dumb bitch Barry Weiss is just basically doing Trump's. It's just become an arm of the Trump propaganda. But it's fucking pathetic. And
I think it's gonna crash.
But I do.
It's gonna fall within.
We started plugging your special and talked about how bad comedy is.
Rebel with the Cause.
Rebel with the Cause.
Get the little plug in there at the end. Might as well. And it's funny because I don't think they did this on purpose. but that's probably the best thing they could have possibly done for promotion. Like Stavros says, they bring the special up and then start joking about like right-wing comedy and stuff like that. So those are the moments that people pick up on. And that was actually probably the best way to get people watching that specific moment of this podcast. So there you go. And, it's stuff we've heard before from Stavros. Like I said, this isn't the most earth-shattering moment, but I do think he makes the very astute argument here that it's this idea of like a continued career in a certain like right-winger path. And people identify that, and they identify that as a way they can go. And so they sort of lock into that. And it is easy for comedians to do that because they already have sort of an excuse to get in front of people and talk to them about stuff. So, as long as they can kind of insert the pretense of it being funny or some jokes in there, even if they're just like, harsh jokes about minorities or whatever, then it kind of works, and it's an excuse to be in front of microphones, and that leads to podcasts. And it's always interesting to remember that Ben Shapiro was, wanting to like write movies and stuff back in the day, and that's still what he's doing now. And they're trying to do a whole movie arm of the Daily Wire, which I think was a big bust and hasn't made them any money. I haven't seen as much from them on that front over there at the Daily Wire. Seems like they're more focused on trying to keep their general viewership up. But that was always his interest, was not just to do movies and be one of the popular kids, but to like influence culture with this sort of conservative thinking. And we're seeing that more now, that more entertainment is coming out that sort of has this right lean. You see these weird companies, movie production companies that are like, specifically Christian or kind of have a right-wing tinge to it. And I suppose that's all right, but it's always bankrolled by something because movies are incredibly expensive to make. And as AI becomes more of a tool that chips away at some of that expensiveness, at least among people that don't have union contracts or respect for the art, probably more and more of like, Christian right-wing slop of all genres, of all kinds of entertainment is going to kind of keep getting spit out there. The right-wingers are going to be the ones that have no scruples about just using AI algorithms and outputs to blanket the public conversation. So that'll probably be an opportunity, and I kind of see glimmers when I see the fact that critique from a pretty left-wing perspective of some of these comedians, these Austin comics, the racism of it all, some of it comes from a pretty noticeably left-wing perspective. And it still seems to be hitting because people are like hungry for that again, for like these critiques of the fact that these guys are cozying up with right wingers like Trump. And even it seems like, the whole inner circle of Jeffrey Epstein was like laundered through the Joe Rogan Experience and has helped contribute to the culture we live in now. So it's not just a spread of information or misinformation, but it is a cultural exchange that we all kind of have to deal with being woven into the fabric of our society at the moment. And so pushback to that anywhere we can get it is good. And it's funny because I've seen a little bit of people turning on Stavros as well in some of these online comedy spaces because he criticizes the right. Like at first when he was doing Two Bears, One Cave with Chris DiStefano, who's kind of a right-leaning dude, I think he supports Trump, they subbed for Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer's podcast for a little while. And at first everyone loved it because they were trashing Bert and Tom Segura, and they still, I think, get a good reception. But I noticed more people turning in the comments on Stavros because he was critiquing the right wing. So you still have a little bit of them getting sensitive about that. And I think that the cultural pushback is getting to a moment now where you see right-wingers and supporters of Trump a little bit on the defensive again. They're getting a little whiny again about the idea of like, making things political, and I don't know why you gotta say it like that, and I don't know why you gotta be like that about it, because they're starting to lose the cultural conversation again a little bit. And it's only just starting, and I think it's too early to see where things are gonna go. But certainly, ICE has gone too far, and that was one of their main cultural touch points that they felt like they won on, was immigration. And now the narrative is starting to fall apart a little bit because a lot of people are passing around the information that most of these people that they're arresting, going after, deporting are not violent criminals, and they're not hurting people in the way that the administration and people like Stephen Miller and everybody in the administration has been saying are the ones that they're going to go after. And so I think there's plenty of people who are still diehard, but the cultural tone is changing a little bit. There's a little bit of a shift, and you see the administration on the back foot. Trump is doing interviews where he's saying, oh, I feel really bad, and nobody feels worse than ICE about this, and it was a terrible thing that happened. And then Tom Homan, who was sent in to kind of de-escalate the situation, is now drawing down some of the people, only a small amount. They sent 3,000 of these agents to Minnesota, and now they're removing 700, which is a signal that they're planning to remove more of them, but also that they are trying to save face here. They don't want to remove them all at once. And, you know, the operation is effectively over. That doesn't mean it's over on the ground. ICE is still going to keep going at it, but they've lost this. And Tom Homan is saying, don't keep up with the interference with ICE, because we're just gonna arrest you, and you're not gonna slow down ICE. You're just irritating your neighbors. But that, if that was true, he wouldn't be saying anything about it, and they wouldn't be drawing down in the first place. The whole reason this is happening is because the people of Minnesota and Minneapolis were willing to interfere with ICE, even though it was dangerous and resulted in death for some of them. That is why they're giving up, because it's not worth it. And the people there are continuing to resist, and they should continue to call attention when ICE is in the neighborhood and going after people. And ultimately they're going to draw down either way, because they have no other way to fight this. They've already chosen that they don't want to keep fighting with the citizens of Minneapolis, and that's why all he's saying is, we're going to arrest you. He's not saying we're going to stay here longer if you guys keep fighting us, although they're trying to make it seem that way. But what he's really saying is that behind the scenes, we're getting cooperation from the state and local government, and so that's making it so that, you know, he's praising them for cooperating with him, Walls and Fry and others, and saying that that's the reason they're drawing down. So that's really why Tom Homan was sent in there, was to find an out and find a way to de-escalate the situation, because there's no need for them to be there, especially in connection with these allegations of fraud, which now people are admitting that's not expected to go anywhere. And so quickly they realized that they charged fully ahead into this, wanting war, fully wanting to stoke this conflict with the people there because they thought they could win. And then they realized that's not actually what they want, because it's making them look terrible, and they've pretty much blown all of their political capital because of those incidents. And so that's why you're seeing them on the back foot here. And as far as the government there cooperating, I'm not sure what kind of conversations are happening behind the scenes. I'm sure there's some capitulation, but at the same time, already, like a huge portion, most of the people that had been arrested by ICE in Minnesota before this recent surge, most of them came from the prisons and the jails in Minnesota. So that cooperation was already happening. Whatever cooperation they're saying is happening now, that it's allowing them to draw down in the streets, was already happening before. So that's a crock of shit. And really, it's just that they lost. They bit off more than they could chew, and it started to look really bad. And so now they're giving up. So people should not stop protesting, and people should take note of what they were doing there in Minneapolis, all across the country, because they weren't actually attacking these ICE agents. They weren't firing at them. They weren't actually doing anything violent to engage with them at all. Neither of the people that have gotten killed were doing that, and none of the other incidents that we've heard were people like directly violently engaging with ICE agents, maybe like throwing snowballs at them or something. And while there's some people out there who think that that shouldn't be the case, and those people should be engaging more violently because of the violent nature of what ICE is doing, it's still true that the tactics in Minnesota worked, and it worked without violently engaging. Now, 2 people got killed, and that's the result of, you know, going and facing off with ICE agents, federal agents like that, without being willing to draw arms in the same way that they are. Even Alex Preddy, who had a gun, at no point in any of the footage that we've seen did he go for his gun with these ICE agents. But still, it seems like the people of Minnesota are at least winning if they haven't won already. In my opinion, this is essentially over, but it just depends on what happens from here. I can't see any scenario where people on the ground continuing to do what they've already been doing causes Trump all of a sudden to double down and be like, we're going to send agents back there. I mean, he's so back and forth that maybe that'll happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think they've already decided that this wasn't ever worth it, and whatever cooperation they're now or communication they're now getting from the local government is enough for them to say, okay, they've capitulated enough that we're going to put our focus elsewhere. And now the Democrats, in this moment where they have leverage to, essentially dictate or have a lot of sway over what the terms of funding for DHS are, they've finally put forth some demands. They have 10 demands here. Targeted enforcement, meaning they can't enter property without a judicial warrant. End of indiscriminate arrests. No masks. Require ID, meaning the agents have to identify themselves. Protect sensitive locations like churches, hospitals, schools, polling places. No racial profiling. Uphold use of force standards. Ensure state and local coordination and oversight. Oversight is a key word there. Build safeguards into the system. Body cameras for accessibility, not tracking, and no paramilitary police. So, I mean, honestly, I think that's a pretty good list of demands. And it's a calculation on their part that, shutting down and unraveling DHS, in their view, is not on the table at the moment. But these demands are something that could actually get put through. Now, the only way I would say this is enough is if these are the terms. The concern here is that if this is the beginning of a negotiation, then what we're going to get on the other end of these demands is watered down nothing. Because these are pretty good and specific on an individual level. And things like, protecting polling locations, stopping racial profiling, no masks. There was some reporting earlier that they were just going to say, oh, well, only masks in certain situations. But it appears now they're saying no masks. So as long as, like I said, those are the firm terms that we're talking about, then this might be decent. The only thing is that, you now have people in Trump's orbit talking about how they're going to use ICE at the polling places and they're going to use that to go after the election. And that's the obvious fear that people have. Now, Steve Bannon says things like that because he knows that strikes fear in the heart of liberals and some leftists. And he's right, and it's right to, it should. And I don't mean to say that Steve Bannon doesn't mean that when he says it, but Steve Bannon does seem to have limited influence. He has his finger on the pulse, and when it comes to something like January 6th, he was very helpful. So that is an area where he's dangerous when it comes to on the ground, trying to coordinate essentially with people outside of Trump's administration to do some kind of violent event. But when it comes to him saying, this is what we're going to do with ICE, he doesn't have the ability to make that decision. Doesn't mean that Trump isn't going to do that or trying to do that. And I think that's probably why they're drawing down there, is because they feel like it's too early. It's too far before the midterms. And if they are going to try to use violence as a justification to try to steal the vote or to try to militarize these polling sites, or they're going to try to escalate the situation on these streets, doing it now is kind of blowing it too early, and there needs to be more planning, stockpiling, and building of resources going into that. So that's really why it's important for Democrats to write that into these demands. This list that they have is decent for the set of concerns that we've seen already, but we all know where this is going and what they're trying to do, and so this needs to have built in a consideration that Trump is trying to build ICE to be something much different than what it is now. And I think it would behoove all of us to start thinking of ICE as a Bush era, post 9/11 era police force. And everything else that we associate with coming after 9/11 in terms of legislation and surveillance and what government capabilities to surveil us expanded to be at that moment. ICE is a part of the same thing. ICE is put there because arresting immigrants, even if you're talking about these immigrants in jails and prisons in these localities, some of these are people that haven't necessarily been convicted, and ICE still goes and takes them and puts them in their own detention facilities and deports them. And so that right there is depriving them of their rights, even though those are the ones that on the mainstream news, they're all agreeing these are the people that we should be giving up to ICE, and there's no consideration for that at all. Nobody is fighting for the due process of the people in the jails who are also being taken by ICE and disappeared. Because immigration is a gray area, and these people, all of them, whether they're violent criminals or supposedly violent criminals or haven't done anything wrong at all, they're all vulnerable to a police force like ICE because they fall into legal gray areas. And they are going to try to expand that as much as they can to try to demote people's status as citizens because of things they've said, and then expand that into ICE's purview. So unless Democrats and us, we, find a way to stop them from doing that now, that is what we're going to see happen in the midterms. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but I do think they're going to try. And the only way it's not going to be successful is if we follow the lead of people in Minneapolis and not allow it to be.
Me too close to, too much to do. The mission is too crucial. Shout it out from the rooftops until I lose vocals. Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity.